Hello, welcome to yesterlore. I'm Grimm's Lawyer, and today we are going to look at the Old English rune poem. Now, what you see on the screen right now is not the Old English rune poem. This is just a list of Old English runes that appears in a different manuscript. I'm forgetting the name of the manuscript off the top of my head. I should have written it down beforehand. But these are Old English runes. Now, if you were present at or saw the recording of last week's stream, you'll remember we saw Elder Futhark runes and how they evolved into Younger Futhark runes. And I mentioned that there are two sort of main daughters of Elder Futhark. One of them is the Younger Futhark runes that we saw on the Swedish rune stones last week, and the other main daughter is the Old English runes that we see here on the screen. So what we're going to be reading tonight, and probably for the next couple weeks, is what's called the Old English rune poem. And it is basically a series of very short stanzas that are kind of like riddles for the names of the letters. The runes, as we talked about last week, are basically an alphabet that were used to write and are used to write Germanic languages, and each rune has a name, and each name has a meaning. They're basically just nouns that exist in the language that are given as names to each rune. And the poems, the stanzas in the rune poem, are basically riddles that will try to get you to get the name of the rune. The additional help for getting the name of the rune is that it needs to alliterate somehow with the rest of the line of the first line, because as we're probably familiar with by now, with Old English poetry, there's alliteration as a key feature of the poetry. So the names will alliterate with the first line of the poem, because the first line of the poem is incomplete without the name of the rune. So before we actually get into the rune poem itself, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we have our copy of the rune poem, because it's a bit of a story. And honestly, the textual history of the manuscripts that we look at in yesterlore it's pretty interesting, and I should probably include it more. I usually just kind of mention where this thing is found, but I kind of think I should include more of the background information for each manuscript. So, where's the rune poem? How do we have it? So the rune poem was in a manuscript. Keyword was. That will make sense momentarily. In a library called the Cotton Library, which was really just a collection by this guy named Robert Cotton. And at first, the Cotton Library was held in, I can't remember, somewhere in Essex. Can't remember exactly where, but it was moved, and where it lived for the longest was this house that you see a picture of here, called Ashburnham House. And it was moved here, the library, all of the collections of old manuscripts, mostly Old English, but some others as well. There's some Middle English stuff. The copy of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight that we have, Beowulf, the Battle of Maldon, very important Old English texts. The Linden Farm Gospels were all held by Cotton, and they were moved to the Ashburnham House so that they would be less likely to be burned if there was ever a fire. And Ashburnham House was right in front of, you can probably see it maybe in the background of this picture. It was held at a house near West Burnham Abbey. Now, ironically, in 1731, there was a fire in this building to which the library was moved in order to prevent it from catching fire. So, a lot of documents were damaged in this fire. One of the main documents, I shouldn't say main documents, Beowulf. Beowulf was partially damaged, and there are parts of Beowulf that we can't really read very well because of this fire. The Battle of Maldon manuscript that we had was basically destroyed. Thankfully, someone recorded it beforehand, and so we have a copy of that. And the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, the Old English rune poem, was burnt to a crisp. Completely gone. But fortunately, hello chat. So the Anglo-Saxon rune poem was held in this library, Ashburnham House, in order, along with all the other things, Beowulf, the Battle of Maldon, to prevent them from being burnt, because I guess the place they were before was more prone to fire. Well, this place caught on fire in 1731, and the Old English rune poem was burnt to a crisp. Parts of Beowulf were singed. The Battle of Maldon was destroyed. Thankfully, the Battle of Maldon was copied, like I said a moment ago, by, I think, Thomas Heane. And the Old English rune poem, fortunately, was copied by this guy. His name was, Humphrey Wanley, I think was his name. I don't think we have his copy of it, as far as I know. What we have is that Humphrey Wanley's copy was copied by and published by this guy, George Hicks. And George Hicks was a very important figure in the Anglican Church. He wrote some other kind of inflammatory theological documents, but he was also known as an antiquarian. He was really interested in Old English, and he wrote a book called Institutiones Grammaticae Anglo-Saxonicae et Mesogoticae, and it included a bunch of Anglo-Saxon and other Germanic texts that he was interested in, including, thankfully, the copy of the Old English rune poem. So all we really have is his copy. And I'm going to close these tabs here. I'm going to close this tab as well. Here is his copy. Here's in his book, we can see. This is the Old English rune poem. And here's how it's structured. So, like I said earlier, there's a stanza for each rune, which is basically a riddle for the rune's name. And so we have the rune on the left-hand side, and above it, he's actually kind of written the answer, or at least what he thought the answer was. We're not sure if the actual original manuscript had the answer written, but the answer is inferable by the rest of the stanza and also alliteration. It needs to alliterate with the rest of the line. The other help is that there are other rune poems that do have the names of the runes, and the Gothic alphabet. The names of the Gothic alphabet largely correspond to the rune names, and so we can kind of use cognates to help us too. So lots of help. So even if they weren't originally in the manuscript, most of his guesses we can kind of just take as, yeah, that's probably the name of the rune. Because we're not sure if this was just him guessing or if the answer was written in the original manuscript. We don't have the manuscript. We just have his copy. So, as you can see, this is an old print edition because this came out in a couple of centuries ago. So, but he kind of preserved the Old English spelling to a good degree, like in terms of what the letters look like. This looks like these letters belong in an Anglo-Saxon manuscript. It's just clearly typed. At least a lot of it is. And what we also see is he kind of just kept things nice and neat on a line. That's very unusual for Anglo-Saxon manuscripts. He also put, at least in the earlier stanzas, he put dots between words that might not have been or probably weren't there in the original manuscript. Punctuation was not very common, and also a lot of the places where he put dots aren't really places you'd pause. They're just sort of where the meter has a break, and even then, sometimes he doesn't really get that right. So what I've done is I've basically transferred how he transcribed it but I typed it so that maybe it's a little bit more legible. And so here we have kind of the same format. We have the rune and its name, and then we have the rest of the poem. And I've preserved his dots. We can ignore them as we go. But I've preserved his dots and some of the other choices he made in terms of spacing. There's a considerable amount of scholarship on where certain words should be spaced, and I can bring those up as we go through. But what we're going to do today is we are going to try to interpret just the plain meaning of the stanza. What do we think the stanza is saying? There's so much literature out there on what the stanzas mean for runology and runic divination and loads of other topics that people have been able to sort of extrapolate and build off of this poem. But we're just looking at what does it say, plainly. And how do these stanzas basically function as riddles for the names of the runes? So, before we start, are there any questions before we get started? I just wanted to check if there are any questions in the chat. Are we ready to go? Oh, yeah, one other thing I wanted to send. I think my chat doc is being a little slow because I can't click on it. It might be an issue here. I was going to send the URL for the website where you can see the manuscript. I'm using the Old English poetry facsimile website, which is a great resource. And all you have to do is search for the thing you want there, and then you will find it typed. You'll find the facsimile if they have it. Usually they have it, and some other notes there as well. So I've posted that in the chat. I don't know why my chat doc is being so slow. I'm going to close the chat doc and then reopen it. Okay. And that has like a ton of Old English poetry. Pretty much any Old English poem you could think of, they probably have it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to my version, my doc version that's a little bit easier to read. And we're going to start. And I am actually going to start off by not reading to you what the name that Hicks wrote above the runes actually means, because these function, or they can function kind of as riddles. So we're actually going to try to figure out if, before I translate it, people in the chat can get what the rune's name is before I say it. So we have blank. Riddle moment, yes, chat. All right, we have blank bith. I can read it in Old English at least. Feoh bith frovor, fira jehwilchum. Shalthach manna jehwilch, michlun hittalan. If he wille, fordrichtne dames leotan. So, feoh, whatever that means, is. So bith is. And this bith, we've encountered this before on prior episodes. Old English had two verbs for to be in the present. The one that translates to, or looks more like is sort of the more general one that you see more. That just describes what something is. Bith is a bit more what we call gnomic. It's sort of like throughout all time, what is something always? Or what is the nature, the inherent nature of a thing? We'll use bith. There's also feoh for the first person, bist for the second person. And this is actually cognate to some of the other verbs for to be in other Germanic languages as well. So feoh is, and this word frovor. Frovor means comfort. Comfort. So feoh is a comfort, or is comfort. Fira jehulcho. Now, I'm actually going to translate jehulcho first. Huilch, here, this is huilch. Remember, this is the letter win. Looks kind of like a P, but it's a W. Huilch is where we get the word witch from. W-H-I-C-H. And it's in the dative case, so it's to witch. But when we add ye before it, actually when you add ye before most question words, what it basically does is it makes it, what's the word? I'm forgetting the word. Distributive, that's the word. So instead of meaning which, it means more like whichever, or whomever, or any of whatever thing you're talking about. And often you'll see, this is actually a formula that exists in a lot of Germanic poetry. You'll see a word that means any or each, and then this will either be followed by, or usually preceded by, a word in the genitive plural. So it means like of plural thing, and usually it's a word that means people or man generically in the plural. So of men or of people, of warriors. So it'll usually be of warriors, each, or whichever, whoever. And it's basically a poetic way to just say everyone. That's all it really denotes, probably, is just anyone. We actually see another example of it over here, manna jehulch. Manna being the genitive plural of man, so it's of men, and each. So each of men, everyone. It just means everyone. Fira is a nice word for people. It actually comes from the word feoh, which means like soul. It's related to the word for oak tree, but it means soul in Germanic languages. So basically, in this sort of adjectival form, it means like mortals, people who have souls, and it's plural, so like the souled ones, the ones with souls, the mortals, each among mortals, or each among the living. So feoh is a comfort to each among the living, to everyone. Then we have shall, feoh, manna jehulch, michlon hittalan. The feoh here, we're going to skip shall. Feoh means, it's where the word though comes from, actually. It's why there's a GH in the word though. But it can also mean, when it's starting a new clause, it can mean something more like although, or but, or however. So, but, or yet, shall manna jehulch. So everyone, each among men, must. Shall basically means must. It's where shall comes from. Shulan is like to owe, or to have to do something. Or it could just mean like it is a fact of life that one does this. Shulan can be used in that way, but probably this is a suggestion. Each among men shall michlon hit dalan. Dalan is our other verb here. Dalan means, that's where the word deal comes from. Dalan means to share, to deal out. And what are we dealing out? Hit. Hit means it. It's where it's hit here in this later West Saxon dialect that this is written in. I forgot to mention, the dialect that this is written in is late West Saxon, probably 10th or 11th century. Probably copied from an older Kentish or English dialect manuscript. A lot of the language, although the sort of word forms look like late West Saxon, like that's probably when this was written in the original manuscript that existed before it was burnt. The original is probably much older. There are sort of like linguistic hints that this is probably composed way, way before. Not everyone agrees with that theory, though, but some people do suggest that this was probably really old, and it's just that the copy that existed was copied late. That's the case for a lot of Old English poems. And what we see here with share it out, is this word mitchlun. Mitchel means, basically, it's where much comes from. It means great, or here, probably, this is a later variant of the dative here. Dative is for adjectives, masculine and neuter adjective, and plural dative adjectives are usually but in later Old English we also see un with an n as well. A lot of the time, as we've seen in a lot of manuscripts, it was actually a u with a line over it, and whether it was an m or n was technically ambiguous. So mitchlun is in the dative. Why? So much, but in the dative, deal it out. What we see here is what's called an adverbial use of the dative, and this is something that Germanic languages like to do a lot, where instead of using something that is more akin to like our li for an adverb, what Old English will do is put an adjective or a noun in the dative, so it's like for or to something. So instead of saying, for example, instead of saying greatly, you could say in greatness or with greatness. And that's probably what's happening here. So share it out, deal it out greatly. Probably the sense here is generously. Each among men should share it out generously or greatly. Be like share. Sharing is caring. That's what's saying here. So feoh is comfort for all people. Each person, yet each person must share it out greatly, share it out generously. Gif he wille for drichtne dames leotan. Okay, this is where things get fun. So if he wants, wille, this is where will comes from, but it usually has a more of a sense of want, to will, to desire. If he wants, leotan is our other verb here, leotan, and there's much that could be said about this verb. Domes leotan, dom, it's where doom comes from. It means judgment. And domes here is in the genitive singular. Leotan has sort of two sort of genres of reading here. Domes leotan could mean to gain estimation or judgment, like to gain of judgment. Usually when you use leotan for to attain something, that's what leotan can mean in later Old English, and this is later Old English. You use the genitive of the noun that you're wanting to attain. Attain judgment or attain estimation. Fordrichtne. Fordrichtne. Drichten means Lord. And for, with what is the dative form of drichten here, drichtne, has a couple possible meanings. When it's fordrichtne, it probably means something like before a lord or before the Lord. So if he wants to gain judgment or gain honor, gain estimation before the Lord, or it could be his Lord. Now the other thing that leotan can mean is, and this is a much older meaning of the word, it comes from its etymology. Hlot is a lot. Like in gambling or in making a wager. A lot is something that you would cast. You would like throw sticks to maybe ascertain something, or you might draw lots to see who gets the short end of the stick, as the proverb goes. So leotan can also mean to cast lots. So it would be cast lots of judgment before the Lord or before his Lord. So there are two possible readings there. And there's debate about which one makes more sense in the context. So something, feoh, is comfort for all, but everyone should share it out generously if he wants to gain honor or to cast lots of judgment before the Lord or before his Lord. So I'm going to, because of time, I'm going to actually reveal what this word is in a second, if no one has any guesses already of what it is. Something that is a comfort for everyone, but should be shared out generously if they want to be seen in a positive light. Something that you wouldn't want to hoard, maybe. So the answer for this, feoh, is, oh, someone has maybe an idea. Wealth. Yes, that's basically it. Feoh means wealth. Means wealth or money, or it's actually the origin of the word fee in modern English. A fee, it's like pay something. Feoh meant wealth or money. Originally, actually, feoh meant cattle. And cattle, like having a cow, was basically having wealth. So the word developed to just mean wealth. As well as cattle. It still uses cattle sometimes in Old English even. So yeah, correct. Great job. The next one, let's go to the next one. I'm going to go a little bit faster because of time. We're going to look at this one. Ur bith anmod and overhyrned. Felle fregna deor, feochteth mid hornum. Mara morstapa, fatis modi wucht. So, whatever this thing is, bith anmod. Anmod means proud. It's actually one, and then mod, which is where mood comes from. Anmod. Mod by itself can mean proud or brave or just having strong emotion. Modi here, again, probably means brave or something like that. So anmod is proud. It's like one of one mood. Proud. And overhyrned. And there are actually two readings that this tends to get. Some people will combine these into one word, overhyrned. Whereas others will have it separate, overhyrned. Hyrned is the straightforward part of this. It means horned. Horned. And over can mean like above, over. So horned above, like it has horns on top. So whatever this thing is proud and has horns on top. Or it is overhyrned, one word, where over is sort of like an intensifying prefix, like it's uber horned. It's like mega horned. Has very intense horns. And I think both readings make equal amounts of sense, in my opinion, and kind of simultaneously. I like to translate them simultaneously, like they both mean both. And if that makes sense, that probably didn't make any sense. But the answer to this riddle, both would be equally true. Then we have fella frekna. Fella means like very, and frekna is fierce, dangerous. Frekna. Very dangerous. Deor. Deor means beast. I think we had this in one of our riddles before. Deor means beast. It's actually where the word deer comes from, but in Old English it was more generic. Any animal was a deor. A very dangerous beast. Feochteth mid hornum. Fights with its horns. Fights with horns. And then we have a line break here in Hick's manuscript. He actually puts a dash here, so like the next, this is one word, mata. Mata means famous. Mata. Famous, mor stapa. Stapa, it's related to the word step. It means a stepper, one who steps, one who walks. And mor is a moor, like the sort of wilderness areas, desolate areas that you see throughout the British Isles, or the moors. So a famous moor stepper, moor walker. That, this is that abbreviation for that, that's thorn with a line through it. That is modi wucht. That is modi, brave. Wucht just means creature, being, someone. Wucht. as a brave creature. So it's a brave creature that's proud and has horns above, or has intense horns. It's a very fierce animal which fights with its horns. It's a famous walker of the moors. Any guesses for this one before I reveal it? I'll probably reveal it in like 20 seconds. For this one, I'll give it to you if you're close, because this one is a little unfair. Oh yes, so whatever means, is proud and has horns above, or has intense horns. Okay, yeah. So in one go, yeah. So is proud and horned above, or has great horns. Very fierce beast or animal that fights with its horns. The famous moor walker that is a brave creature. Yeah, so I'm going to give that to you because this is tricky. You said bull. That's basically the closest you can get, because basically this is probably an aurochs, which are extinct, so this is not really fair. Technically, the wild aurochs is extinct. It's where bulls and cows come from, so I'm going to count bull. And it's actually interesting that this comes right after feoh, which means wealth, but comes from a word for cattle. It's almost like thematic here. But this order goes back like probably a millennium before this was written, so probably not on purpose in this sense, but we don't know. But yeah, bull, basically, bull. An aurochs. Alright. Next one. This one might be guessable just from what the Old English word is. It's one of those ones where the word hasn't changed much. I'm going to read it once through in Old English and then go ahead and translate it through. I don't think this one will really be a riddle for us. So, thorn bith tharla sharp, thena jehulchum, anfeng is evil, unje metum reda, manna jehulchum thehim mid resteth. So, thorn, whatever the heck thorn is tharla sharp. Sharp sounds like what it is, sharp, and tharla basically means like severely, like very, 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 tharla sharp, very sharp. And then we have this formula again, thena jehulchum, so jehulchum again, so to each among, and then a thane, basically a warrior who's loyal to a lord, so it's just a kind of another generic word for man. So to everyone, again, it's just a formula, it means for everyone. So a thorn is severely sharp for anyone, for any warrior. Yeah, I said among. The genitive plural often gets translated as among when it's with a singular noun. Among, not like the game. Close. Why is this happening? Okay. Yeah, so the thorn is very sharp for anyone, any warrior. Anfeng, this is probably not where the break is, it's probably anfeng. This might be a place where Hicks put the space in the wrong way, because anfeng is a word, anfen, and then gis is not. Anfeng is evil. Anfeng comes from the verb anfon, which means to take up. So to pick it up, to take it up, is evil. Is, and evil means bad. It's where the word evil comes from. But in Old English, it just meant bad. Not as severe connotations as the word evil has in modern English. It's just bad. Picking it up is not a good idea. It's bad. Unjemetum reda. Unjemetun. This is another dative that probably has an adverbial meaning. Unjemet means immeasurable. And so this is like immeasurably. And then reda means harsh. Another word for severe, like frekna was up here, fierce. Reda, harsh, severe. Immeasurably harsh. Ow. Picking it up is a bad idea. It's immeasurably harsh. Mana yehulchum. So to everyone, again. the him mid resteth. Anyone who or which, the is just kind of like that, or who, the him mid resteth. So this is it in the dative. It looks like him, and it means him as well. But if it's just an inanimate noun, it's also going to be him. With him, with it. Mid, it means with, and then resteth, rests, or sits. So it's immeasurably harsh for anyone who sits with one, or who's among one. I know I said the word among again. Just be careful of thorns. It's basically what this this poem says. Thorns are very sharp. For any warrior, picking one up is bad. It's immeasurably harsh for anyone who rests with them. All right, him can also mean them too if it's plural. All right, let's go to the next one. This one is really tricky. I'm not going to treat this one as a riddle. Nobody is talking about it, but it's so true. Yeah, thorns are sharp. Who would have thought? Now, this poem, thorns are sharp. Thank you. Yeah. One thing I didn't note with this is that when we get to the Norwegian and Icelandic rune poems, we're going to see that they don't call this rune thorn. They have another name for it, which is also probably not something you'd want to pick up. But it's not thorn in the other rune poems. So this one I'm not going to treat like a riddle, not because the word is extremely obvious, but because there's two possible meanings that both kind of work, and scholars disagree. So I'm not going to put you through trying to guess it. So let's take a look at what the poem says here. We have everything got kind of slow for a second. Sorry. Give me a second. All right, let's go. So we have os bith ordfruma. Okay, so we'll come back to what os means because that's kind of the crux of the debate, which is unfortunate because that's the answer to the riddle. So os bith ordfruma. Ord means speech. Now it can also mean like the end of a spear, but it's probably not what this means. There's debate about that too, but probably it's speech. Ord fruma. Fruma means sort of the origin or the originator. A lot of the time when we have a noun that ends in a, kind of like we saw with morstappa, or the more stepper, an a is going to be like one who does it. So the fruma is one who frums, one who is the origin of something. And so os is the origin of speech, the speech originator. Altra spracha, of all speech, or of each speech, each thing that someone says. Spracha is speech. So of all speech, of each thing that someone says. Wisdomes uradu. Wisdom is wisdom, and uradu means a support. So, and uradu can be a literal support, like a beam that holds something up, or it could be more metaphorical, like an assistance. Here, probably just an assistance. A support of wisdom. And witana frovor. Here's that word frovor again. Comfort. So a comfort, witana, of the wise. Wita is a wise one, so it's comfort of the wise. And eorla yahwam adnis and tohicht. So and is and. Eorla yahwam. This is another one of those formulae where we have ya and then a question or like a hua word, and then that's following a genitive plural. So we have another among people thing going on here. Yahwam, whoever, to whoever, among eorla. Eorlas is where the word earls comes from. Eor is earl, but it basically just is another word for warrior or noble. So each among warriors. Eadnes antohicht. Eadnes, this nis here is like ness. Eadnes, eadi means like joyful or easy. So this is joy. Antohicht. Tohicht is a way of saying hope. Hicht by itself can mean hope. Tohicht means hope for something. It's just another way of saying hope. So os is the origin of speech, of all speaking. It's the speech originator. Wisdom is orado, and witten afrover, and eorla jehuam eadnes antohicht. I should start that over again. Yeah, orfruma. Oh, I didn't say the other sort of more straightforward read of this is just that ord is a word that can also mean origin or root, or like the point of something. This is kind of related to that spear reading. The origin point. So this could also just simply be origin point. So os is the origin point or the originator of each speech, of all speech, a support for wisdom and a comfort of the wise, and to each person, to everyone, to all warriors, joy and hope. So the two readings of os here. Os could be a borrowing from Latin. Os in Latin, one reading of it is that os in Latin means mouth, and that this is a borrowing from Latin. So it means mouth. So the mouth is the originator of speech, the originator of all speech, a support for wisdom and a comfort to men, and for everyone is joy and hope. Okay, so mouth might make sense if it's a borrowing from Latin. The other read of it is os, being an old word for God, like a pagan god. And specifically, this is a cognate to the word os in Old Norse, of which the plural is asir. Those are that's sort of like the pantheon of many of the gods. Oh, you were going to guess mouth. Nice job, chat. Yeah, mouth is one of the readings. Now, os appears in a lot of Old English names with that sort of older meaning of like a pagan god. And specifically, it often kind of denotes a specific god, which is Woden, or Odin in Old Norse. Woden, or Odin, was associated with speech. He's credited with giving humanity the runes themselves, of which we are reading the poem. So this could actually be a reference to the god Woden. So Woden is the origin of all speech, a support of wisdom, and a comfort to the wise. He is a god associated with wisdom, so that would also make sense. And is joy and hope to all warriors. He's also associated with warriors. So both readings make sense. So it's kind of up to the individual interpreter of how they want to read this rune. Now we have Rad, and this is probably maybe the last one, maybe the second last one that we'll be able to get through. Now Rad does have a modern English cognate, but it's kind of a false cognate because people assume it means the word that descends from it a lot of the time, but it does not. So we'll still treat this one like a riddle. So Rad bith on recede, rinka jehwilchum, sefta an sweethwat, tham thesiteth on uvan, mara mayen herdum, over mil pathas. Sorry, that should be a short ah. Okay. So Rad is, and I think this should probably have a space in it. I would argue should have a space in it. I don't know if Hicks maybe didn't put a space, or maybe I didn't put a space when I copied it. We could check his manuscript. Let's see. Oh no, he didn't put a space. Well, I think there should be a space. And most translations I've seen imply space here. So yeah, rad is on wretched. Wretched is a word for building. So in a building, rinka yehuilchum. This is another one of those genitive plural yehuilchum or genitive plural yehuam, where it's to each, and then a rink or a rinch is a warrior. So each warrior, for everyone, for each warrior, is in a building. Safety and sweetwhat. Safety means mild or soft. It's actually related to soft. Safety, soft. Mild, and sweetwhat. Thamthisitas onuvan mara mayan hardem over milpathas. So sweetwhat means very, very strong. What can mean strong, and then sweet is very. So very strong. Thamthe, to the one who sits, on uvan mara mayan hardum, who sits upon mara. Mar means a horse. It's where the word mare comes from, but in Old English it wasn't specifically gendered, it just meant horse. Mer. So upon a horse. Mayan hardum. This is dative, so it's going to kind of go with mara. It's just describing the horse. Mayan is strength, and hardum is like hardy or strong. So probably just very strong, powerful, strong in strength, powerful. So to the one who sits on a powerful horse, over mil pathas, across mil pathas. Mil is a mile, and pathas are paths. It's just the plural of path. Path is path. Didn't change much. So mile paths. Basically, that's another way of saying road. It's still indicating that it's a road that's measured in miles. Like, it's probably a road that's established, and people have done the sort of reckoning for it already. So something is mild for anyone in a building, and strong or powerful, or maybe even like rough, for one who sits on a strong horse across the road. Do we have a guess before we move on to the next one? I think I want to do one more before we end the stream. Wind. Okay, that's a good guess. It's not wind, but I can totally see how that works for this. Wind is mild for someone who's in a building, and intense for one who's riding on a horse. Yeah, that's a good guess. I'm going to give the answer. The answer is a ride or riding. And it kind of doesn't make a ton of sense at the beginning. Riding is mild for someone who's in a building. Well, yeah, because you're not riding anywhere. But it's intense for someone who's sitting on a very strong horse riding over the mile paths. Now, rad means ride, like a ride or riding over somewhere. It could be like the journey itself often is referred to as a rad. But it's the origin of the word road in modern English, and some people mistakenly translate this as road. Road in Old English is usually way, just W-E-G, which is where the word way comes from. Way means road. And, or you might see more specific words like milpath, a mile path. But rad specifically means like a journey or a ride over, and it's related to the verb ridan, which means to ride. The reason we use it as a noun, road, now, is it probably is sort of a shortening of the older word roadway, which is the way you ride, the road you ride on. Roadway, and then that just kind of got shortened to road, simply. Yeah, so a journey. A journey is, if we think of it as journey and not ride, because it can mean both, but a journey is mild for someone who's in a building already, right? Who's already sitting down. But it's very strong, intense, for one who is riding on a horse. Okay, let's do the last one for today. I was hoping to get to these two today, but we'll probably have to stop at the hour. So, ken bith quicera Yahwam, Kuth on fira, black and bertlich birneth oftest, thar he athalingus inna restath. So, ken bith quicera Yahwam. Again, we have quicera Yahwam. That's another one of those genitive plural followed by Yahwam or Yahwich. So, Yahwam, each, quicera. Quick means alive. So this is like of the living. So each of the living. So kin, whatever kin is, kin means like you relate to a character. It's not kin. It's kin. Yeah. So kin bith quicera Yahwam kuth on fira black and bertlich. So kin is to each among the living. Kuth. Kuth means known. It is known to everyone. On fira black and bertlich. On fira. Fira means fire or flame. Black. Black means pale or shining. Well, to me, kin means Sonic the Hedgehog. Thank you. Yeah. Black. It looks like the word black, like the color black. Black in Old English is black, B-L-ash, see? Often it's also zwart. Zwart is pretty common as well, maybe even more common than black even. But block with a long A, or sometimes it's black with a long ash, means shining or pale. So it's known to everyone by its fire or on fire, shining and unbeurtlich. Beurt is where the word bright comes from. So brightly or bright. It's just another way of saying bright or splendid. So Cain is known to all the living by its shining and, like, its pale, shining, and splendid fire, or pale, shining, or splendid flame. Birneth oftust tharhi adalingus in resta. It burns oftest, that's basically oftest, most often or always. Thar, here means where, wherever. Thar, he is they. Adalingas means sort of princes or nobles. Inna, restath. Inna means inside. Restath means resteth, rest. Wherever they, nobles, rest inside. So Can is known to everyone by its bright and shining fire. It burns always where nobles rest inside. So it's something that burns indoors. Think in the Middle Ages. So probably not a light bulb. But what would people have used back in the day instead? That was a fire that you could have inside, bright and flaming. It's a tool, maybe, or like a fixture. Yeah, so fire. Yeah, there's fire involved for sure. Candles. Yeah, that's basic. That's pretty close. Yeah, candles. Torch. Thank you. Yeah, it's torch. Can means torch. Yeah, can is torch. So a torch is known to all by its bright and shining fire that burns always where nobles rest inside. That's a torch. Yeah, candles is really close. Candle in Old English is actually a borrowing from Latin. Usually it's candle. And there's some cool kennings involving the word candle. I think. Oh gosh, I can't remember them off the top of my head now. But I was gonna guess gold initially. Oh, that's a good idea. But yeah, so we will come back and do Yivu and Wen next time, and then probably the next 8 as well if we have time. A lot of time was spent this time kind of going over the manuscript history, and so we'll have more time to just do straight up translation and stuff next time. So thank you for everyone who participated today. Epic riddles as always. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I actually almost wasn't going to do these riddle style, but then I remembered, hey, these kind of function like riddles if you don't know what the name means. So epic riddles poems as always. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so thank you everyone. If you missed last week's stream where we also talked about runes, we talked about Swedish runes and we looked at some rune stones, I definitely recommend that as well if you have time. But yeah, so for the next few weeks, because there are 29 stanzas, and we got through 6 today. So this will be for the next couple weeks. We will have more time next week, so we'll probably get through a lot more. But the next few weeks we'll be doing the Old English rune poem, and then we'll move on to the Norwegian and Icelandic rune poems as well. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your time zone. Thank you, and good night.